Hey there guys, I am SonicGhost and welcome back to some more Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Last time, we got our precious Ocarina of Time back and we remembered the Song of Time. Using this new song in hand, we were able to travel back to Dawn of the First Day here in Clocktown, meet up with the Happy Mask Salesman once again, and have him return us to our human form. And because of that, we know another song we can go ahead and use in our arsenal now, the Song of Healing. So if we go ahead and make our way over to the quest status screen here, we will see all the songs we know here in our pause menu. If we ever forget the song, we can go ahead and highlight it just like this and press the A button. And then we can hear the song being played back for us. So we can see the song and we can practice it up for ourselves. So if you ever forget a song, go to the quest status screen and this is where you relearn it. But in today's video, we're going to go ahead and make our way outside of Clock Tower once again here and see now what we can do in the town that we are now back in our human form. But before we leave, let's go ahead and see what the Happy Mask Salesman here has to say. You'll do fine. Surely you'll be able to recover Majora's Mask. Only 71 hours remain, but time is not eternal. Please make the most of your time. I believe in you. I will be waiting here for you. He's not kidding. The Happy Mask Salesman will never leave here, and he will always remind you how much time you have left. So if you're ever unsure how many hours are left exactly, you can come back here in the Clock Tower and talk to the Happy Mask Salesman. But let's go ahead and leave the Clock Tower once and for all. That mask. The Skull Kid uses the power of that mask to do those terrible things. Well, whatever it takes, we gotta do something about it. The swamp, mountains, ocean, and canyon that Tail was trying to tell us about. I bet he was referring to the 4 areas just outside of town. There's one in each compass direction. But what do you suppose he meant by the 4 who are there? I have no idea. He always skips important stuff. I guess we should just go and find out. If we go through that gate straight ahead, we'll be heading in the direction of the swamp. Well, that's good to know, so if we are ready to go, we can just make our way outside and we'll be good. But we don't want to leave just yet. We got a couple of things we want to do around Clocktown here. So for starters, this statue here. We seen this earlier in our adventure, but we didn't have a sword at the time. So now, let's go ahead and stab it with our sword. Doing so, we will go ahead and activate this statue, and if we check it again, we get a whole new set of messages here. You can save your progress and quit here. When you reselect your file, your face may appear by your file name. This indicates that your next time that you reopen your file, you'll resume playing at this very place and time with your current status. Warning though, if you reopen this owl file, then reset without saving at an owl statue, you'll lose the progress that you've saved here. The next time you open the file, you'll restart at day 1 with the status that you had when you last saved using the Song of Time. Owl statues are a temporary save, so if you ever need to save the game in a pinch, you come up to one of these owl statues and you can go ahead and save the game. But there's an interesting thing to note about this. I'm actually going to go ahead and save right now. Owl statues work very differently in the international release of Majora's Mask compared to the original Japanese release. And this is because of this system right here, the file select screen. In the North American version, the one I'm playing now, we see we have 2 files we can go ahead and select. In the Japanese version, since this was the original release of Majora's Mask, you have 3 save systems you can work with. And because of this in the Japanese version, you can only save using the Song of Time. This is how they were able to use 3 save systems, just like Ocarina of Time, the predecessor to Majora's Mask. The reason why the North American, just in general the international versions of Majora's Mask only have 2 save slots on the game now is because to get the ability to use owl saves along with the Song of Time saving your game, they needed to take away the 3rd file slot to have enough room in memory to save your game with the owl statues. So owl statues still do have a purpose in the Japanese version, but we won't be seeing that purpose right away. We'll be seeing that purpose later on in our quest. One thing I can say about the Japanese owl statues right now is that even though they don't have any use to you just yet if you are playing this version of Majora's Mask, when you do activate them, they do have different text in this version, which will roughly translate to "Ye who holds the sacred sword, over time and place, we become friends forever." This may sound vague, but this will be explained more later on in the game. So for right now, don't worry about this message. It will become important later in the game. But we can go ahead and select our file here, and we can see this was saved on the first day at 6:25. So it tells you the time of day and what day you're on in particular. So we can go ahead and reload our save here. And we are right back in South Clocktown in front of the statue. Ye who hold the sacred sword, ye have returned to the appointed spot. If you wish to interrupt your adventure or game again, speak to me, the one that you marked to prove your encounter. So anytime we do need to save, but we're not ready to go back to the dawn of the first day, these are useful things, but what I recommend doing if you're going to be using owl saves is be very mindful of your play session and make sure you do save often with the Song of Time if possible. If you're going to be relying on owl saves specifically, make sure you copy your save file to the second slot, as if something does happen and the owl save is deleted, having a backup of your save file is very crucial. So that is one big thing I wanted to talk about. But there's also something else I want to mention. We were told by a certain scarecrow that there are two different songs that we can go ahead and play that revolve around time. One said if we play a song backwards, we'll get a very interesting effect. So if you play the Song of Time backwards, you will be able to play what is called the inverted Song of Time. So instead of sending you backwards in time, this will slow down the current flow of time. So now we are slowing things down dramatically. Time of day in this game is very fast, and in fact, you only have about an hour or so to play through the entirety of Majora's Mask from start to finish of the 3-day cycle. The inverted Song of Time will slow down the in-game timer here in Majora's Mask to 30% of its original speed. So this is a huge difference. If you want to return the flow of time to normal, you just play the Song of Inverted Time once again, and you'll be able to revert the flow of time back to how it's originally supposed to be. So we could revert back to normal if we want, but I'm going to leave it on inversion for now. But there's another song we were taught about. If we play the Song of Time twice, basically, so we play two of these notes, so the first note twice, second note twice, and the third note twice, we will play what is called the Song of Double Time. So this works basically in a very similar way to Song of Time, where it can time travel you, but instead we can skip ahead to certain hours. Specifically, Song of Double Time will advance time of day between 12-hour increments. So we can go from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. of any given day, and then 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. of any given day. So let's just go ahead and proceed to the night of the first day. So now we are jumping ahead very far in time, and in fact now we are pretty much at one of our big markers here. We want to actually be at night the first day to do a bunch of stuff in Clocktown, and this works out. Now we don't have to sit around and wait all day long for it to become nighttime. But I think before we do anything else, we need to actually go a little bit further back in time, actually. What we need to do is we need to go back to the very beginning. So now we're going to be playing the Song of Time, and we're going back, not to Dawn of the First Day, however. We're going back to the very beginning of our adventure, because it is time for us now to take a look at some version differences between Majora's Mask on the N64 and the 3DS version of the game. So here we are in the intro sequence for Majora's Mask 3D, and now entering into Clocktown. This is where we're going to start seeing our first major difference between the 3DS version of Majora's Mask and the N64 version of the game. So for the most part, Majora's Mask 3D does play very similarly to its N64 counterpart, but there are some differences here and there. First things first, I kind of want to mention how the dialogue system works. As you see, text is displaying much faster in this version compared to the N64 version of Majora's Mask. So if you want to speed through this dialogue, it's very easy to do so. As right here, we already know this speech from the Happy Mask Salesman. We can just press B and immediately just start skipping through his dialogue. It's very, very fast. But that's not really the difference we're looking at here in this cutscene. So for the most part, this cutscene plays out in the exact same way as it did on the N64 version. You're getting told here by the Mask Salesman that if we get our precious item back, he can transform us back into a human, but we do need to get something back for him in 3 days. And once he gets that whole speech done, then this is where our first major difference comes into play. One more thing. Please be so kind as to direct your gaze over there for a moment. That strange stone over there, do you see it? It's called a Sheikah stone. When the world has weighed you down with worry, crawl inside and let it show you the way. If ever you find yourself lost on your grand adventure, seek the counsel of this wise old stone. It will surely help you on your noble quest. Well then, I'm counting on you. So this Sheikah stone over here, this is an interesting concept. This was introduced in Ocarina of Time's 3DS remake, and it makes a return here in Majora's Mask 3D. So we can crawl inside the Sheikah stone, and it's basically a hint system in the game. But as of right now, we're way too soon into our adventure, so we can't even get any hints just yet. Go on, get out of here, scoot! Go have some big adventures. If you get stumped, come see me. I'll be happy to help. So we will revisit it in here, and we'll be able to see what this stone is all about. But as of right now, it is kind of useless, so let's just go ahead and make our way out of here. So here we are in South Clocktown. You're going to notice right away, this place is very big compared to the N64 version. Well, there's a very specific reason why. South Clocktown, out of the 4 different quadrants here in Clocktown, is supposed to be your major hub area of this area in general. So there's a lot here we can go over, but first things first, I want to go ahead and take a look at this. This here is an owl statue. So in the N64 game, we needed to hit this with our sword in order to activate it. Here on the other hand, it just activates automatically when we walk up to it, and now we can save our progress. This is how you save in the 3DS version of Majora's Mask 3D. It's exclusively with these owl statues. So in the N64, you needed to play the Song of Time in order to save. So because of this, in the first cycle of Majora's Mask, there is no way to save the game. But now in the 3DS version, you just walk up to an owl statue and you can save at any time. The downside here is, Song of Time will not save anymore in this version. So there is a drawback to this. But now we look at this, if we turn around, we'll also see another change here. We have the banker just right here in South Clocktown. They moved the banker over here now compared to West Clocktown, so it's much easier to get to this guy. So we can go ahead and deposit our money right away here, and I'm going to go ahead and do just that. As you see, it defaulted me to the max immediately, so I didn't even need to type in my amount of money in order to deposit them into the bank. It just automatically grabbed my max, and then I can adjust it from there. One thing I should mention about the banker here in Majora's Mask, and this goes for both the N64 and the 3DS versions of this game, is that whenever you deposit money into the bank in Majora's Mask, it will always be there no matter if you are going back in time using the Song of Time. So there is a way to save your money in Majora's Mask, but you must deposit it in the bank before you play the Song of Time. For the most part, everything else here is very similar in the town, but there are some differences here and there we want to go ahead and go over. So I just finished playing the first day's game here in the Deku Playground, and now our victory prize here for winning is a fishing hole pass. So instead of getting 50 rupees, we got ourselves a brand new item exclusive to the 3DS version of Majora's Mask. We won't be able to get into detail as to what this will entail just yet, but know for now that this item, we'll be using this later on. So I went ahead and completed day 2 here of the Deku Playground game, and just like day 1, we get a fishing hole pass instead of 50 rupees now. So all that's left is day 3, and I'm going to go ahead and take care of that game right now. Alright, so I just completed day 3 here at the Playground, and you would think, oh, maybe you're getting another fishing pass, whatever that is. No, you get a piece of art now. Day 1 and 2 prizes are changed from 50 rupees to the fishing hole prize, but in the 3rd day, you still get the piece of heart. So, at least this is consistent. So now we are playing hide and seek here with the bombers, and as you will notice right away, one of them isn't here behind the tree. They moved around the bomber locations now for the 3DS version of Majora's Mask, so they're now not going to be in their exact same locations. Now they spread them out, so there's one bomber in every area. So there's going to be one bomber in at least one of the 4 different sections of Clocktown: west, east, north, and south. So we got the one that was in north. Now we need to go get the one that is in east and go from there. So this is a very different thing here, and that's going to definitely throw you off if you play the N64 version of Majora's Mask a lot like myself, as I've memorized where the kids are in that version, not necessarily where they're at in the 3DS version. So it's a much bigger scavenger hunt, and they're not as easy to get to now. This one, for example, in East Clocktown, he's on the very top of the Stockpot Inn, this time more, however, on the rooftop itself and not just this little hutchway. So that's a much bigger difference there. You actually have to fly up to where that kid is located in order to get him in the 3DS version here. But luckily we do have all day and all night to get these guys. We just have to make sure we find the bombers before day 2 starts. So having this bigger time buffer is a much bigger difference to me in the 3DS version, just because of how much bigger certain areas are here and how they spread out these kids a little bit more in the 3DS version. I can already hear one of them walking around, so as you can tell, the kid in West Clocktown, he wasn't moved, but we can go ahead and just grab him real quick. Just to demonstrate, over here, this is where the banker was originally located in the N64 version of Majora's Mask, but now they just patched up that little bit of the area with the wall, so there's nothing here to replace that, it's just a wall now. So there's another bomber, we need 2 more, and then we'll have them all. Got one here hiding in the laundry pool just under a box. And now there's only one more bomber left, so let's go ahead and get him. Here's the final one right here, hiding in a box right in South Clocktown, and that is that. So as I mentioned earlier, this is harder than the N64 version of the bombers hiding game, simply just because now they're more spread out. And they're a little more clever with their hiding spots, but it's still not that big of a deal. So now let's go ahead and get our code here. And as mentioned in the N64 version, this code is different every time you start a new file. So for my 3DS playthrough, it is now 45312. So now when you get the Moons tier, you get yourself a little bit of a different explanation about stuff. Every once in a while, the game is going to tell you about how you use different items. And this is a good time to go over how they handle the item system here in the 3DS version. The moon sure is huge right now. It looks like it's going to come crashing down on us. But don't worry about that silly moon. Just focus on the Skull Kid. You know where he is. And there's nothing left to do here. Let's go to the clock tower. But before we do, since the game wanted to go ahead and talk about how the gear system works, this is a good time to mention just how different the inventory system is here in the 3DS version of the game. So, we can't pause the game by pressing Start Select, we actually need to tap on the touchscreen here in order to access our inventory now. So, we can take our Deku Nuts here and we can press X or Y to assign it, or we can go ahead and drag that item over to the 1 or 2 slots here on the touchscreen. This gives you more slots to use these items, but in order to use them, you actually need to tap on the touchscreen. So I wouldn't recommend having your important items you're going to be using very frequently on those touch buttons. You also could do the same thing with the mask screen. And if we go into the gear menu here, this is where we'll have our trading quest items now. So Moon's Tear is not an equipable item anymore. It's instead now put into your gear menu. So now you don't have to worry about fiddling around in your menu to get to something like this. It is now just going to be permanently in this gear menu until you reset the flow of time. You can also do the same thing here with the map. And this is actually a pretty interesting thing too, because we can go ahead and zoom it in using the X button here on the top screen. And we can see exactly where we're on the bottom screen. Press in on the screen here to zoom it in and get a better view as to everything else you can do here in this specific area of the map. But that's pretty much all that stuff, so let's go ahead and make our way over to the clock tower. Alright, so here we are in South Clocktown. We're going to go ahead and get our Deku Scrub over here, and we're pretty much done here in first cycle. We just pretty much now have to wait out the timer and confront Skull Kid on top of the clock tower itself. But now, here's how the trading thing works. It will go ahead and open up your inventory, and now, since your trading quest item isn't an equipable thing, it's in its own separate menu over here on the right. So we just select Moon's Tear, give it to our Deku Scrum friend, and that is that. It's still just as easy to do trading here in this version as it is in the N64 version, and in fact, in some ways, it's even easier because the game just directs you right to the menu so you can go ahead and select your item. You don't have to equip things now, and it's, in a way, a little more straightforward in my opinion. But now we're just going to go ahead, wait out the timer, and we're going to confront Majora there on the top of the clock tower at midnight. Alright, so now we just got to the point where we got ourselves our ocarina back, and now we know the Song of Time once again. So, now we are ready to go ahead and travel back in time. So, one of the biggest things you're going to notice is that if we go to our items, we don't see the Ocarina of Time anywhere here. Well, that's simply because the Ocarina of Time is always going to be permanently equipped to the bottom left-hand corner of your touchscreen. So if you tap the Ocarina button here, you'll go ahead and pull out your instrument. And now, the biggest difference here in this game compared to N64 Majora's Mask is how you play the instrument. So on the bottom screen here, we'll notice we can go ahead and interact with it, but we can also press on the bottom right here. We got this little music chart. If we press this, this will open up the list of all the songs that we have learned in the game. So whenever you're playing your instrument, you can actually see what notes you can play to play any certain song. So we can go ahead and play the Song of Time while looking at the chart for the Song of Time. In case you ever forget songs, this is a very easy way to play them. Notice how when we played the Song of Time, we didn't get a prompt to save. So as mentioned earlier in the video, you can now save in the 3DS version only with owl statues. Song of Time will not save your game anymore. Alright, now we have learned ourselves the Song of Healing, and we have returned into human length. So now, we will go ahead and get ourselves Deku Mask, just like in the N64 version. But that is not all. In the 3DS version, this is where they do a change in where you get a specific item. So, we not only get the Deku Mask here, but we also get something else from the Happy Mask Salesman. Oh my, I nearly forgot. While you were gone, I found one of these. It appears to be one of those fancy notebooks the local brats carry around. Perhaps the imp dropped it? I have no use for things like this, so please consider it a gift. I insist. No, really, take it. Use it. Now, only good things could come of it. So not only do you get the Deku Mask from the Happy Mask Salesman here, you also get the Bomber's Notebook. So now instead of getting this from the Bombers themselves, the Happy Mask Salesman will make sure you get this. As in the N64 version, this notebook was 100% optional if you never interacted with the Bomber Kids ever again. So in this version, they make sure you get the Bomber's Notebook to keep track of all the in-game quests a lot easier. In order to pull it up, we go ahead and press the pause button, and we can go ahead and see a list of all of our events, and we can go ahead and check very specific things, like our Bomber Society secret code, in order to get back into the observatory. From now on, events you see in people's schedules will be added to your notebook automatically. Hopefully you'll find it useful. I'm confident you have no trouble handling the most urgent matter of this menacing mask. The fate of this land rests in your capable hands. You'll be fine. Surely you can do it. Believe in your strengths. Believe. So another thing I want to go ahead and mention while we're in here now is we've done a couple different things in the 3DS version. So now the Sheikah Stone here is going to be active, and we can go ahead and see what it has to say. Say, you're not having trouble, are you? No need to answer. It's written all over your face. Would you like to use some of my powers? Yeah, sure, give me some hints. Let's see what you have to say. So here we have hints based on certain things we can do, like the first 3 days of the game. It does have a hint system here, and they're already all cleared. So I never checked the Sheikah Stone to see what to do, but it does have hint movies here based on things that you can do in the game that tell you exactly what you can do and how you do it. So if we look at Beyond the Secret Path, for example, this shows you where you need to go in order to enter your code, and then also to get your moons tier. They are very compressed videos, I will say, but you're only watching this on a small little 3DS screen, so you don't really notice this too much. I'm noticing it more here for a video because I'm blowing this up to a 1080p frame, but that's besides the point. That is what the Sheikah Stone will do for you whenever you do need help. And that's pretty much all the major differences here between the 3DS version and the N64 version of Majora's Mask to mention. There are a lot of other little differences here and there we can go ahead and look at for right now, but for the most part, everything we've kind of looked at here, we pretty much seen all the major differences between First Cycle for N64 and 3DS. The only thing really now to mention is that the Song of Double Time and the Song of Inverted Time works a little bit differently in this version, mainly the Song of Double Time. The Song of Double Time in this version allows you to skip ahead in 1 hour increments compared to the N64 version, skipping ahead a full 12 hours up until 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. of that given day. In this version, you can go ahead and pick to go 1 hour ahead, 3 hours ahead, 6 hours, you name it. And that makes a lot of these in-game quests a lot easier in this version, since now you can pinpoint how much time you want to advance instead of waiting around for that in-game timer to pass on its own. Another thing to mention now is how the Bomber Kids act. Whenever they see Link in town and they have a hint to give you, they will automatically run up to you and talk to you to give you your said hint. So this will make things a little bit easier when you're in town if you're not really sure what you need to do, or if there is a piece of advice the kids will give you that could be useful in town for one of your quests or something. Then that is one difference, because in the N64 version, you have to seek these kids out in order to get help. But for the most part, that is pretty much all of our major differences for now in this version. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and end things here on that note. So next time on Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, we'll continue on with the actual story now in the game, and we'll go ahead and properly leave Clock Town. I'll see you guys next time.